My name is Emily Carter. I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I'm telling it because people still believe silence means weakness. It doesn't. Sometimes silence is preparation, and sometimes it's a trap. I met Daniel Carter when I was 21. He was confident in the way only unproven men are: loud opinions, big dreams, empty pockets. He talked about success as if it were late, not missing, as if money already belonged to him, it just hadn't arrived yet. I believed him, not because I was naive, but because I was practical. I believed in systems, in effort, in structure. We balanced each other, at least that's what it looked like from the outside. When we married, I had savings, a stable job, and a quiet confidence. Daniel had ambition and a talent for convincing people. Our first apartment was small, our furniture was borrowed, our future felt large. I paid attention to details. Daniel paid attention to appearances. That difference would define everything. Daniel tried several business ideas before one finally stuck: a construction supply company. At first, it was just him and one warehouse worker. He asked me to help temporarily. Just bookkeeping, he said, until we can afford someone. Temporary lasted 9 years. I handled payroll, vendor payments, loan applications, tax filings, cash flow, contracts, audits, and damage control. Daniel handled meetings, lunches, handshakes, and confidence. People called him self-made. I smiled beside him. The business grew quickly, but unevenly. Revenue looked strong. Debt grew faster. Daniel didn't notice, or didn't care. He loved growth. He hated limits. Whenever I warned him, he laughed it off. "You worry too much," he'd say. "That's why I handle the big picture." I stopped arguing. Instead, I documented. The house came next. A large place in a good neighborhood. More space than we needed. Daniel wanted it immediately. We took out a first mortgage, then a second, then borrowed against future business revenue. I signed nothing without reading. Daniel signed everything without reading. That pattern never changed. The cheating didn't come suddenly. It crept in through late nights, unexplained trips, sudden gym routines, and a phone that never left his hand. Her name was Lauren. She was younger, louder, impressed by stories. Daniel didn't hide her well. He didn't need to. He assumed I wouldn't leave. And he was right, but not for the reason he thought. By the time Daniel asked for divorce, I already knew the truth. Not about the affair, about the money. 3 years earlier, I had noticed small inconsistencies. Interest rates changing without explanation. Loan balances increasing despite payments. Vendor notices arriving too frequently. So I started investigating quietly. What I found shocked even me. Our net worth wasn't positive. It was deeply negative. The house was worth hundreds of thousands less than we owed. The business was propped up by credit lines disguised as growth. Taxes had been delayed. Equipment leases were structured like assets. On paper, Daniel looked wealthy. In reality, he was drowning. And he had no idea how deep the water was. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I prepared. I separated my personal savings, money from before the marriage. I secured my inheritance from my aunt in a protected trust. I copied every document, every contract, every signature. I waited, because men like Daniel always want the same thing in a divorce. Everything. When he finally asked for one, it was transactional. "I want this clean," he said. "I'll take the house, the business, the cars. You can take your clothes and move on." I nodded. That surprised him. He expected resistance. I gave him silence. He hired an aggressive lawyer. I hired a careful one. During negotiations, I asked for almost nothing: No spousal support, no assets, just a modest cash settlement. Daniel thought he had won. Lauren moved into the house before the divorce was finalized. She repainted the kitchen gray. Daniel was impatient. He wanted it over quickly. When his lawyer suggested a financial audit, Daniel refused. I know my numbers, he said. He signed a waiver. That was the moment everything locked into place. The day in court was quiet. The judge asked if I understood what I was giving up. I said yes. Daniel smiled. The papers were signed, assets transferred, liabilities transferred, sole responsibility assigned. Daniel never read the liability addendum. He didn't know that by demanding everything, he had taken everything, including the debt. The first sign came 3 days later. A call at 6:47 a.m. Daniel's lawyer. Then the bank, then vendors, then payroll. Numbers don't respect confidence. They demand payment. At his office, Daniel finally opened the document. Page 17, Section 4B. All existing and undisclosed debts are assumed in full by Daniel Carter with no recourse to Emily Carter. He read it again. Then again. His hands shook. That sentence had been written years earlier. By me. When I still believed I was protecting our future. Lauren left within a week. I didn't sign up for debt, she said. The business collapsed within months. Equipment seized. Clients vanished. Employees unpaid. Daniel filed for bankruptcy before the year ended. He texted me once. I didn't know. I didn't reply, because knowledge isn't the same as responsibility. 6 months later, I saw him at a grocery store. No suit, no confidence, just a man who finally understood the cost of not listening. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. I live smaller now, quieter, better. I help women understand finances before divorce, because silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's mercy. And sometimes it's justice. He didn't lose his life because I took revenge. He lost it because I let him keep everything he asked for. The sun had just started to set, painting the city in shades of amber and gold. I stood at the balcony of my small apartment, Tyler leaning against my side, his arms folded, eyes thoughtful. He didn't need to speak to understand the chaos his father had created. He'd seen it all. The sudden disappearance of money, the eviction notices, the unpaid employees, the creeping panic in Daniel's eyes, and yet Tyler didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He just watched, quietly absorbing the lesson life had taught him. Not all victories are loud. Some are quiet, deliberate, and precise. I poured 2 glasses of juice, handing one to him. He took it without looking at me. I let him have the silence. We didn't need to fill the room with words. Sometimes silence itself was a statement. A month had passed since the final documents had been signed. The aftermath had been slow, painful, but utterly satisfying. Daniel's empire, the one he had bragged about, had begun crumbling under the weight of debts he had eagerly claimed. Each missed payment was a small ripple of justice. And yet I couldn't let it end there. Victory wasn't only in watching him struggle. Victory was in ensuring the lesson stayed etched in memory, in making sure the arrogance that had once blinded him would never find shelter again. I started checking on his company's operations from the edges, quietly. Nothing illegal, nothing overt. Just small nudges, subtle reminders of reality. I spoke with suppliers discreetly, confirmed overdue invoices, noticed the gaps he had overlooked in cash flow. Everything was exactly as I had predicted. Tyler finally broke the silence, his voice low but steady. Mom, what happens when he figures out the trust fund? I smiled. He didn't fully understand yet. He won't. Not unless he learns patience. And Daniel never had patience. He looked at me with those sharp, calculating eyes, the same ones he had inherited from his father. But where Daniel had inherited charm and entitlement, Tyler had inherited awareness and caution. My heart swelled with pride. The next weeks were a lesson in watching a man unravel. Daniel had stopped leaving the office after 6 p.m. Instead, he spent nights staring at spreadsheets that refused to reconcile. Calls from creditors came at all hours. His phone was a symphony of warnings. Every expense he had ever claimed was now a weapon turned against him. And through it all, he had no idea it had been orchestrated years ago, long before his demand for everything. Meanwhile, the house, once immaculate under my care, became a monument to disarray. Brittany had left, frustrated by the constant phone calls, the vendors showing up unannounced, the sense that something in the house didn't add up. She hadn't realized she'd been walking into a financial battlefield. When she left, Daniel tried to maintain appearances, but the illusion was gone. Every wall, every furniture piece, every reminder of grandeur was tainted by the debts he now owned. Outright, I visited the property only once to retrieve a few personal items I had deliberately left behind. The silence in the halls was heavy, almost accusatory. I imagined Daniel walking through the rooms, running his hands over the counters, realizing that nothing, not even the house, was truly his. I let the doors close behind me and never returned. Tyler and I had begun rebuilding our lives. I had enrolled in more advanced interior design courses, started taking small clients, and even picked up a part-time consultancy for new homeowners. The joy in creating something for myself, rather than building someone else's dream, was intoxicating. Tyler thrived too. His schoolwork improved, and he even took up chess, a game of patience and strategy, a subtle echo of the lessons he had absorbed over the past months. Then came the first call from Daniel I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Emily, I need to talk. Please. It's urgent." I listened once just to gauge the tone. Fear, frustration, desperation. But no apology. No acknowledgement of the calculated, patient game I had played. Just a man realizing he'd been outmaneuvered. I didn't return the call. Some lessons must be learned fully, without interference. A week later, news reached me that Daniel's business had been forced to liquidate two of its most valuable assets. Machinery sold at auction, clients withdrawing contracts, vendors no longer willing to extend credit. Each domino fell exactly as predicted. I checked the public filings casually, a smile playing on my lips. Justice wasn't about vengeance. It was about letting natural consequences take their course. Tyler came to me one afternoon, excitement in his eyes. "Mom, I think I understand something," he said. I set aside the paperwork I was reviewing and leaned back. "What is it, Tyler?" He hesitated, then said, "People show who they really are when things go wrong." "You taught me that?" Without even trying. I hugged him, feeling the weight of the past years lift slightly. He had learned more than strategy. He had learned observation, patience, and discernment. Meanwhile, Daniel's public image suffered. Former colleagues whispered about missed payments and mismanaged finances. Social media buzzed with speculation. The man who had once boasted about wealth and success was now a cautionary tale. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every lavish dinner, every expensive watch, every boastful post had contributed to his downfall. And every step had been documented, ready if any legal challenge had been attempted. The most satisfying moment came unexpectedly. Daniel appeared at a charity event. a fundraiser for local schools. I attended under a pseudonym, helping organize interior spaces for the event. He didn't recognize me immediately, but when he did, his eyes widened, just a fraction of the fear he had felt in court. I didn't approach him. I merely watched as he attempted to smile for the cameras, the facade failing under scrutiny. Months passed. The debts increased, lawsuits multiplied, and the once glorious empire became unrecognizable. Daniel and I never spoke again. Letters went unanswered, calls ignored, emails deleted. The man who had demanded everything except Tyler had been taught a lesson in humility, patience, and consequence, all without me lifting a finger once the plan was set in motion. Tyler grew stronger, wiser, and more independent. He started saving part of his allowance, learning about investment and responsibility. I watched him blossom into a young man who understood value, patience, and self-respect. And in that, I found my own peace. On a quiet evening, I stood by the window looking at the city skyline. My apartment, small and unassuming, felt like a palace. Every color, every item, every piece of furniture was a reflection of my choices. I had rebuilt not just my life, but my sense of self. A message appeared on my phone from an unknown number. It read simply, "You won. I see that now." I didn't respond. Victory doesn't need acknowledgement. Its weight is felt, its lesson learned, and its outcome irreversible. As the city lights shimmered below, I realized something profound. Life had finally come full circle. The woman who had been underestimated, ignored, and betrayed had quietly, patiently, and perfectly orchestrated her triumph. The lesson was clear, and it was eternal. You protect yourself, you wait. You act only when the moment is right. And when it lands with precision. I turned away from the window, walking through my apartment, my son by my side. Together, we had survived. We had rebuilt, and we had won. Not with noise, not with chaos, but with patience, intellect, and unwavering determination. And in the quiet triumph of our small, simple home, I knew the future was ours. Entirely, beautifully ours.